and we can use that to transition into Nick Smith Jr. I thought it was an up and down summer league performance from him. There are definitely some positives and some really interesting flashes from him, and some stuff that with him where that really he does highlight just how skilled he is as a player. With the ball in his hands, or as sort of like a off ball mover type guy. And then, ultimately, he just didn't shoot the ball all that well. Still looked a little uneasy at times. Operating out of the pick and roll. He is pretty reliant, the mid range game and the short mid range, runners and floaters and stuff like that to get his shots. And we sort of talked about this maybe a week or so ago on one of the other summer league pods, Darian, but just like he does have to really work for his offense at times. He really has to pound the ball a lot to kind of like try to get the places out on the court. I sometimes like when it's just a little bit more reactive. It's like boom, he flows into a handoff. Try to either get downhill or hit the pull up, or like kick the ball, keep it moving. And ultimately, some of the 3-point shooting numbers, like I thought the shot selection from deep was fine. Maybe a couple early or unnecessary jacks, but for the most part, like thought he took good shots. Didn't shoot a great number from deep, but showed range, showed touch at times. And I just think some of the creativity he has as a guy who has lots of moves, the ball in his hands. You could see him mix in the hesitation moves, keeping guys off balance. And again, when he is patient attacking drop coverage, I think good stuff can happen. But it feels like a little too often he's either going to quickly look for a jumper, or sometimes he just wants to hit the roller a little too early, and he'll throw the pass behind him as they're trying to get downhill on the dive. Or the one of the defenders is able to sort of like get a hand on it because there isn't like enough separation. It leads to some turnovers. Offensively, because I have some thoughts in terms of defense with NSJ, but and we can get into this a little bit more as well. But what did you think about him? Just starting out with his offense in summer league play, Nick Smith Jr.
I thought offensively, this is kind of the summer league, because I know people say some people overreact to summer league, some people kind of play it down a little too much. I felt as though his showing in summer league is about what you expect. I don't think the highs were high. There was times where he was hot and it seemed like he couldn't miss, but then there was also times where his shot simply just wasn't falling. I'm really thinking about Sacramento. It was Sacramento where he wasn't taking bad shots; they just weren't going in. But I do like kind of how he was able to bounce back, which we'll talk about more about how he kind of gave more effort on the defensive end if his shot wasn't falling. But offensively, I do feel like he just moves a little too quick, just still a little too quick. I think we've said before that his body moves quicker than his brain at times, and that's just, I think he just wants to make a play happen. I don't think that's anything necessarily bad. I think he's just so eager to just make something happen on the court, and it just leads to turnovers or a bad shot. I don't think it's really him. I know some people could look at it as just him kind of misjudging situations, which I don't really think that's it either. I just feel as though he's just trying to make something happen as quick as possible and is not willing to let it play out. I kind of get it, because the way his game is right now, it benefits from being that twitchy, quick guy. And when he's able to use it effectively, it works. Like there's very few people, at least at this kind of level for summer league, at least, that could really stop him once he kind of got in his groove. We saw him drop a guy. And hit a shot. So it's just that it's all there. You see it all there. And that's one of the things that I took away from the summer league, is that you're not walking away. It may not look good if you look at the numbers, but I'm not walking away from it thinking I just didn't get enough. I was at first. If we just walked away from Sacramento, I'd have been a little disappointed with his offensive game because of the passing. The passing just looked lackluster. The shooting, like I said, the shot just wasn't falling. And that's something, that was the thing you can hang your hat on in the past season in his limited minutes, was that his shot was falling. So it was just kind of like, okay, well, you're getting, your game has become a little more well-rounded, but now your shot's not kind of hitting the way, it once was. So offensively, I think he just needs to slow down. I do feel like sometimes he was kind of put as a lead guard, and I still don't see him that way, even though, his dribbling ability, his scoring ability, it kind of favors him having the ball more. But I just feel like when I think about how he was such a prospect everybody was looking at, going from high school to college, he had the ball, but I really was wowed by his off ball movement and his off, everything he was able to do off ball, whether that's popping out board three or using a pin down or whatever the case may be. So that is kind of, I don't know if that will ever get that back. I get it, as in, with his handles, with his creativity, I see why he has the ball more. I just want to see him more off ball, because I think that will just get him kind of to slow down, and then we can worry about the on ball, because I think the on ball's there. It's just not consistent enough, and it just needs a little more work. But if we can get his game flowing off ball, I think he seems like he's going to be one of those guys. As the game goes on, he gets better. He gets more comfortable. It seems like there's like a wall, and once that wall is broken, he's fine. But up until then, he's a little hesitant, and it's causing the turnovers. It's causing the bad shots. So that's kind of really how I feel offensively. I think all the talent's there. It's the other part, the basketball part, I guess, is what you're a little concerned with. Can he make the right reads? Can he learn to know when to adjust? Because that's a big thing, especially in this league for guards, is you got to be able to play at your own pace, but also switch to pace depending on the game. And I don't think he quite has that yet. It's still really early. But overall, I like what I saw. Especially, I like that he was able to bounce back from Sacramento, which was very poor in my opinion, to kind of being a lot better in Vegas.
Yeah, he a couple of things that's important to remember. He's still just 20 years old. Yeah. Doesn't turn 21 until November. He missed a lot of time his freshman season at Arkansas. I'm glad they gave him a bunch of reps in Vegas. They put the ball in his hands a lot. And I'm not surprised that it led to, some pretty inefficient numbers, right? From like a box score perspective. My guess would be he's going to play a lot in Greensboro this coming season and get the chance to also like either operate with the ball or sort of be put into some of these off-ball mover positions and actions that we would like to see him in: handoffs, down screens, pistol action. You just find ways to kind of like get him on the move, flowing into stuff, and then like try to see if his shooting and skill can take over. Still has a tendency to like leave his feet on passes. And that was something that was on film, before he got to Charlotte, and thought it popped up, here and there. Sometimes it leads to some pretty nice passes. He had a nice like lay down pass to Jake Stevens in the Boston game, where he sort of drove and floated underneath the rim and then dropped it off for him for a layup. But other times that could produce some sort of more like rough looking passes. Still like the movement stuff. They used him as a screener a lot. He sets ghost screens and, veers out or blurs out, and they try to throw it to him in space and get him going that way. But he is active on the offensive side of the floor. That's not, those are not great numbers, but for a second-year player, still a second-year player, not a ton of experience, not even 21 years old yet, with a lot of skill and with like a lot of like heart and like just like a high work rate. I'm still intrigued by Smith, and I just ultimately think if it's going to happen for him, it's not going to be this year. Especially in part because like I don't think he's quite there yet, and there's a lot of like veteran guards in front of him in the backcourt. We'll talk a little bit more on that towards the end of the pod. Ultimately, with Smith, he's gonna have to get it done on the offensive side of the court. I do think small guards who are like sort of like tough shot maker types like Smith, I do think you need to be patient with them. I think Malik Monk is maybe an easy example of this, but he's not the only one. Like it took Malik time. He's a one and done, another 6'3" guard that's twitchy and can create space with the basketball and can do all this sort of stuff. But it wasn't until like year 3 and really especially year 4 for Monk that he really like the light went on and he started to like really amp up as a driver and as a passer. And it's just going to take more time with Smith. I did think on the defensive side of the court, I thought his compete as a chase defender, fighting guys off of screens and off of handoffs, and just the screen navigation stuff at the point of attack, his work was really good on that side of the court. I thought he bothered guys. The Boston game was a great example of it. I thought he did good work on Baylor Shireman, the Celtics first round pick out of out of Creighton, that's got, a couple of inches on him and is a really talented offensive player. And he struggled in that game against Charlotte. And you can pull up, like, you can go back, rewatch it, or pull up Shireman's, some of the misses he had. Like, Nick Smith was in his jersey curling off of handoffs or pick and roll screen. So I thought Smith's compete level on the defensive side of the floor, the screen nav, looked good. He's still going to have to get stronger, obviously, but I just think his tenacity and his sort of like grit and hustle on that side of the court showed up. And I think that's big for him and Charles Lee, like as their partnership starts. And I think it's a big deal for NSJ, because there's a chance that, he might be able to just like grit his way into more opportunities too, if he keeps doing stuff like that. So I don't know, thoughts on Nick Smith Jr. in totality, or just sort of focusing on his defense out in Vegas?
I think what you said about gritting his way, I think that's kind of spot on, especially for players. I know you mentioned this more so for the offensive side of the ball, but especially his archetype of player, that's kind of what you want from them on defense. It's like, if I can get that from you on defense, fighting off players, fighting off handoffs, then I'll take it any day of the week. I don't think you expect them to be the point of attack. I think you expect them just to bother. That's all you're asking for. I mean, I'm interested to see. I know he's not a Hornet, but I'm interested to see what Rob Dillingham is like, as he kind of fits that kind of archetype of being the smaller guy that can put up shots in a hurry and whatnot. So those guys just initially take time. But what I like for Nick Smith Jr. is that, at least for me, of all the players in the past few years that we've gotten to kind of try to fill in his role, whether all different archetypes, whether that's James Bouknight, Bryce McGowan, he's the one I feel the best about. But a lot of that is because of the work that you mentioned. Every time you hear a coach talk about him, whether old regime, new regime, didn't matter. If they talk about Nick Smith Jr., they talk about how he loves the game. I think everybody says first one in, last one out for him. He's a guy that is going to work his way into being a quality NBA player. And it maybe, it depends on how you look at quality. I'm saying quality is at least can give you some good minutes. But it may not be in the way we see him. It may not be in the way where, you projected him going into Arkansas, maybe even after Arkansas. It may just be in a whole completely different role, but he has what it takes. I mean, especially like you were saying, just defensively, I felt like every game he was getting better. If he was getting caught up on a screen this first game, that second game, he wasn't falling for the same tricks. If he realized he should have dove for a ball, or maybe gave a little more effort on trying to get a loose ball, he didn't make that same mistake again. So I just felt like defensively he was a sponge, and I really like that for him, because I think that's going to put him ahead of a lot of people. And I think that when they do at some point reevaluate this guard room, because I think they're going to reevaluate it soon, and then there's probably going to another reevaluation come trade deadline. They're going to look at him, and he's going to be, how they feel about him is going to be a good indicator of kind of what we're doing. Certain moves you can look back and say, okay, well, Nick Smith, while we may not see it all, Nick Smith Jr. must be doing work, because they didn't get a younger guard. They got this older guard who can get him over the hump, but will be gone next year or something like that. So I really like what I've seen from him. And even offensively, I think that while everything wasn't happening his way, I do feel as though he was improving, but it was just more so what I see him doing on the court, maybe not stat sheet related, but there was just a lot of things that I felt as though was getting better every single game. Didn't hold his head. I know for guys like him, if their game's not hitting offensively, you kind of lose them. But to your point, that defense, it stuck. It stuck from the first quarter to the end of the game. And I think that's something new for us as far as having a young player. So I think there's a place for him. I'm interested to see if it will be in the archetype we think, or will it be kind of in a different role, which he has, especially if he gets stronger, he has the versatility to play a different role if need be. If they need him to be more of a spot-up guy that just gives you really good defense, I think that he can do that as well, if that's kind of what he ends up being. But yeah, it's up to him ultimately.
If the on-ball stuff is going to like become his pathway, like this decision making is going to have to get better. Going to have to like open up a few more passing windows, and like he's going to have to get downhill and get into the paint more. These are the things that we could have circled 50 months ago before the 2023 draft, and they're still the same now, because like again, he's got great touch as a shooter. He's a very creative player. He can create space. He had a really nice step back jumper in the Denver game when Hunter Tyson, they ran a little Iverson action for him, empty side into an empty side ball screen. He rejected it. Hunter Tyson switched onto him, and Smith just instant space creation. Stepping back into the sort of like short corner area for a pull up two, but just he can't often turn the corner, and you see him having to sort of like pick up his dribble and spin and pivot in these sort of like intermediate to short mid range areas and kick the ball back out or take tough shots. And like again, those areas he needs to be able to sort of like punish guys. Draw more free throws, draw extra attention, make a pass, like, to an assist, like that kind of stuff. But he's got a lot of talent and he plays hard and he's young. So I'm hopeful that this is a big development season for him, whether it's in Charlotte or in Greensboro. Likely it's going to be in both.